I was pulling my late father's old chest freezer out of the garage when the dolly tipped, and the whole thing hit the concrete floor on its side. And out of a gap that split open along the bottom panel slid a manila envelope, a cell phone I had never seen before, and a folded document with my daughter's name printed at the top, next to mine, on what looked like a power of attorney form. I'm 64 years old. I live alone in a split-level house in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, that I've owned since 1987. My wife passed 8 years ago, and in the time it took me to crouch down and pick up that envelope, I understood that someone I had trusted completely had been quietly building a road out of my life with my own name as the foundation. My name is Roy Callahan, and what I'm about to tell you started as nothing more than a favor. A simple favor. My daughter asked me to clear out the garage so she and her husband could park their car there when they visited for Thanksgiving. That was the whole thing. That was all it was supposed to be. I had no idea that freezer had been storing something other than my father's old venison since the spring. If you've spent any time on this channel before, you know I don't rush these stories. I sit with them. Because what happened to me in that garage on a Wednesday afternoon in October is not as rare as you think. It's happening in quiet houses on quiet streets all across this country, and most of the people it happens to never see it coming, not once. So settle in, get comfortable. Because the sound of a chest freezer hitting a concrete floor can split open more than a machine. It split open 4 years of something I hadn't even known to look for. My daughter Iris had been after me about the garage since August. Said the driveway was embarrassing. Said the neighbors could see the clutter from the street. Iris is like that. Particular, organized, the kind of woman who alphabetizes her pantry and notices when a throw pillow is 2 inches off center. She gets that from her mother, honestly. I never minded it. I'd always thought it meant she cared about things being right. Her husband's name is Conrad Platt. I'll use his full name because I want you to remember it. Conrad is 41. He works in financial planning. Has a small independent practice over in Camp Hill. Does estate management, retirement portfolios, the kind of work where he sits across a desk from older people and helps them decide what happens to everything they've spent their lives building. He's polished. Good handshake. Remembers your coffee order. The kind of man you trust before you've decided to. Iris met him 7 years ago at a charity auction. She called me the next morning, still excited, and said, "Dad, I think I met someone serious." I said, "Good, I meant it." She'd had a rough few years before that. I wanted serious for her. They married 4 years ago. Small ceremony out at a vineyard in Lancaster County. I walked her down the aisle. I gave a toast. I meant every word. My wife Carol had passed by then. Ovarian cancer, fast and hard. Iris had been my only constant through all of it. She handled the estate paperwork when I couldn't look at it. She drove me to appointments. She sat with me at the kitchen table on the bad nights when the house felt like it had too many rooms. I leaned on her in a way I'm not sure fathers are supposed to lean on their children. But grief doesn't ask permission. What I didn't know was that while she was sitting at that kitchen table with me, she was also learning the layout of everything I owned. I want to be fair. I don't know exactly when it started. I may never know. But I know when I started noticing things that didn't add up. And that was about 14 months ago. A refinancing conversation that came out of nowhere. Conrad at the dinner table, relaxed, almost rehearsed, talking about how property values in Harrisburg had peaked, and this was the window to pull equity while rates still made sense. Iris reaching over and putting her hand on my arm the way her mother used to when she wanted me to really listen. "Dad, it's just smart timing," she said. "We just want to make sure you're protected." I nodded. I said I'd think about it. I am not a man who moves fast on big decisions. Never have been. That's probably what bought me time I didn't know I needed. The chest freezer had been my father's. He'd kept it in his garage in Mechanicsburg until he passed in 2019, and I'd hauled it home because it still ran, and I couldn't bring myself to leave it at the curb. It had his garage smell, motor oil, cedar, cold air from decades of use. I'd never used it much myself. Mostly it just sat there against the back wall, plugged in, half empty, one of those things you keep meaning to deal with and never do. Iris had specifically asked me to get rid of it. Said it took up too much space. Said it was old and probably inefficient. Said Conrad thought we could get a few hundred for it on Facebook Marketplace. So on that Wednesday I unplugged it, let it defrost overnight, and in the morning I got the dolly from behind the lawnmower and started maneuvering it toward the garage door. My lower back has been a problem since I fell off scaffolding in 2009. I knew I should have called my neighbor Pete, but Pete was at work and I figured I had it. I didn't have it. The dolly caught a lip in the concrete, the freezer shifted, and I couldn't hold the angle. The whole thing came down hard on its right side. A seam along the bottom cracked open, and I heard something slide inside, soft, papery, dry, and then it came out through the gap and landed on the concrete in front of me. A manila envelope rubber banded shut. Underneath it, a slim prepaid phone, the kind you pay cash for at a drugstore. And on top of both of them, partially unfolded from the impact, a document. Multi-page, legal formatting. The words power of attorney printed in bold across the top. My name was on the signature line. My full legal name, Roy James Callahan. It was not my signature. I want you to sit with that for a moment, because I need you to understand what it feels like to crouch on a cold garage floor in October and see your own name written in handwriting that isn't yours on a document that transfers legal authority over your finances, your property, and your medical decisions to someone else. The sky outside was the color of old dishwater. A neighbor's leaf blower was going somewhere down the street. Everything around me was completely ordinary, and I was holding something that was not. I didn't pick everything up right away. I just stayed crouched there on the floor, one hand on the side of the freezer to steady myself, looking at my name. Then I straightened up, carried it all inside, and set it on the kitchen table. I made coffee. That's the thing about being 64 and living alone. You learn that the routine is the only thing that keeps you from going sideways when something hits you wrong. You boil water. You measure grounds. You pour. You don't fall apart in the middle of the day in your own kitchen. The power of attorney document was 4 pages. 2 copies, both signed. The signatures on the principal line, my line, were close. If I hadn't known my own handwriting for 6 decades, I might have accepted them. But I know the way I write the R in Roy. I've written it the same way since 6th grade. The R on that page was rounder, pressed harder into the paper. Witnessed by Conrad A. Platt. Notarized with a stamp I didn't recognize from a county I'd never done business in. I set it down and picked up the manila envelope. Inside were 2 documents. The first was a printout of an online account I didn't recognize, opened in my name with a bank I'd never used, with a current balance that matched, almost exactly, the approximate value of the equity in my house. The second was a handwritten timeline, not typed this time. Iris's handwriting, I'd know it anywhere. She writes her 7s with a crossbar, always has since she was little. The timeline started 8 months back. Initiate refinance conversation casual, then revisit with urgency, use rate language, then get dad comfortable with Conrad handling paperwork, then confirm POA notarized, then transfer authority, begin restructuring, and at the bottom underline twice. Wait for travel window. I had a trip planned, 2 weeks in early November visiting my brother in Scottsdale. It was already on the calendar, they knew. I put the paper down and walked to the window above the kitchen sink and stood there for a long time looking at the backyard. Carol's rose bushes were still out there along the fence. I hadn't had the heart to pull them. They go dormant in October, just sticks, but I know what they are. The thought that kept circling wasn't anger, not yet. The thought was simpler and worse. She had a window. She'd built it. She'd been waiting for me to leave. The prepaid phone had no lock on it. That part was almost insulting. Whoever hid it never imagined anyone else finding it. The home screen was plain. One text thread saved under 2 initials, CP Conrad. I tapped it open. The most recent message had come in 4 days earlier. From Conrad, title company confirmed for the 8th. Stay calm if he mentions the trip. From Iris, he's excited about Scottsdale. He won't think about it. I scrolled up slowly. I won't give you every message, but I'll give you the ones that mattered. From Conrad, don't offer information, let him ask questions and deflect with confidence. That's what lands with his type. His type. I closed my eyes. There it is. That's the sentence that changes everything. Not because it's the worst thing in the thread, but because it tells you exactly how you've been categorized. His type. I wasn't her father in those messages. I was a profile. I was a pattern. I was a problem with a predictable response set. From Iris, what if he checks the account? From Conrad, he won't. He hasn't looked at a statement since Carol died. I confirmed it with the branch manager. He'd talked to my branch manager, a man I'd known for 11 years. I set the phone down and sat at the kitchen table for what must have been 30 minutes. Long enough that the coffee went cold. Long enough that the light in the kitchen changed. I didn't move. I just sat with it, the way you have to sit with something when your brain needs time to catch up to what your gut already knows. The thing about grief is that it leaves you open in ways you don't realize. When Carol passed, I handed Iris a lot. Not legally, not formally, just practically. I let her take over things I didn't want to look at. Bills, paperwork, the insurance claims. I told myself she was helping. She was my daughter, she loved me, and she knew things I didn't know how to face anymore. That's what I told myself. I never considered that the inventory she was taking was not for my benefit. I want to say something here. And if you're watching this and you're somewhere past 50 and you've lost a spouse, please hear me. The grief period is when you are most vulnerable to this. Not because you're foolish, because you're human. You're exhausted, you're open, and the people closest to you have access that no stranger ever could. That access is usually love. Sometimes it isn't. I went to the hallway closet and found the fireproof lockbox where I keep my important documents. Title to the house, will, social security card, the original power of attorney I'd signed years ago. A real one, witnessed properly, giving Carol authority in case of emergency. Hers had my signature on it, mine. The folder where I'd kept my copy of the house title had been opened recently. Not obvious unless you knew how I organized things. I put a small piece of tape along the edge of every folder. An old habit from working job sites, helps you find things fast. The tape on that folder had been replaced. New tape, same placement, someone had been careful. Just not careful enough to know about the tape. I closed the box and carried the phone and the documents to the kitchen table and sat back down. Then I opened my own phone and looked for a name I hadn't called in close to 3 years. Mitch Garland. We'd worked construction together through most of the 90s, pouring foundations, doing framing, a decade of early mornings and bad coffee in paper cups. Mitch left the trades in 2003 and got his law degree at night. Spent the last 15 years doing elder law and estate litigation in Dauphin County. I'd sent him a Christmas card every year since. Never needed to call him. I needed to call him. He picked up on the second ring. Roy. His voice was easy, unhurried. What's going on? I almost said nothing. The lie was right there, the kind of reflex you develop over a lifetime of not wanting to burden people. Then I looked at the document on the table with the wrong R in my name. Mitch, I said. I think my daughter's husband has been forging my signature. A pause. Short. The kind that means someone is putting something down and giving you their full attention. Talk to me, he said. So I did. I told him about the freezer, the envelope, the phone, the timeline in Iris's handwriting, the account I didn't open, the R that wasn't mine. He didn't say anything for a moment after I finished. Then, Roy, is this PO notarized? It has a stamp on it. County I don't recognize. Which county? I told him. He exhaled. Roy, a forged POA with a fraudulent notarization is a felony in Pennsylvania. That's not a civil matter. That's criminal. I already knew that somewhere underneath everything. Hearing it spoken out loud by a man who'd spent 15 years watching these things play out in courtrooms just made it land harder. What do I do? I asked. He took a breath. First, you don't touch the accounts. Don't call the bank, don't change anything, don't move a dollar. Any movement alerts them. Second, you do not confront Iris or Conrad. Not yet. Third, you call me first thing tomorrow morning and we sit down in person. He paused. Roy, how long has Conrad been working with older clients? 7 years that I know of. Another pause. Longer this time. I want you to pull his license number from the State Insurance and Securities database tonight, he said. I'll tell you why when I see you. But I want to look at his practice history before we meet. We hung up. The house felt different after that, not hostile, just altered, like something had shifted a few degrees and I was the only one who could feel it. I sat at the laptop until almost midnight. Conrad A. Platt, CFP, registered in Pennsylvania. Clean record on the surface. But one thing, a complaint filed in 2019 by a client in Lancaster County, unauthorized reallocation of retirement funds. The complaint had been settled privately, no formal action, no public record beyond the initial filing. Of course it had. I wrote down the case number, closed the laptop, went to bed. I didn't sleep. I lay in the same bed I'd slept in for 30 years, looking at the ceiling, listening to the October wind move through the sycamore in the backyard. Carol had planted that tree the year we moved in. It was 6 feet tall then. It's 40 feet now. Some things just keep growing even when you're not paying attention. Around 2 in the morning I got up, made tea, and went back to the phone. I wasn't looking for new messages, I was looking at timing. The thread with Conrad went back 11 months. The messages weren't late night, they weren't emotional, they were afternoon. Businesslike, lunchtimes, mid-morning, brief, 15 seconds, 30 seconds, 2 minutes at most. The cadence of people who are working, not people who are sneaking. That told me everything I needed to know about what this was. This wasn't impulse. This wasn't a bad idea that got out of hand. This was a project. It had phases. It had a calendar. And I was the inventory. I met with Mitch the next morning. He had the complaint history on Conrad's practice pulled up before I sat down. The Lancaster case wasn't isolated. There had been a second informal inquiry 2 years earlier. A different county, different client, same pattern. An older widower refinance conversation. Equity pulled, paperwork signed under circumstances the client later couldn't fully account for. No charges either time. Conrad knew the line. He stayed close to it without crossing it. Until now. Roy, Mitch said, a forged notarization and a fraudulent POA is a different category than what he's done before. He's escalating. And the fact that they already have the account open means they intended to move fast once you left for Scottsdale. What do? We document everything. We photograph the phone. We photograph the documents. We get them to a safe deposit box today. He paused. And Roy, you play it straight until we're ready. You do not let either of them know you've found anything. I can do that, I said. He looked at me. You sure? Because that means Thanksgiving dinner. You'll be sitting across from both of them. I was sitting across from both of them at Carol's funeral. I sat through that. I can sit through Thanksgiving. He nodded once. I'll have you ready before they arrive. Iris called that Friday, cheerful, easy, asked how the garage clearing was going. I told her I'd gotten the freezer out, but it had tipped over on me. She gasped a little. Dad, are you okay? Did you hurt yourself? I'm fine, I said. Landed on its side. Split a seam on the bottom panel. A pause on her end, just a half second, long enough. Did anything spill out of it? She kept her voice light. Little bit of old water from the defrost, I said. Nothing else. Why? Oh, no reason, just old freezers sometimes have drainage issues. She moved on quickly. Talked about the drive up from Baltimore. Talked about the cranberry sauce recipe she was making from scratch this year. Talked about the weather forecast. She was good. If I hadn't been listening for the pause, I would have missed it completely. After we hung up, I sat in the kitchen for a while. That half second told me everything I needed to confirm. She knew what was in that freezer. She had put it there, or she knew it was there, or both. Either way, she'd spent the last 3 days waiting to find out if I'd found it. I hadn't told her. Good. The 2 weeks between that call and Thanksgiving I spent building a folder with Mitch. Every message from the phone, photographed, time-stamped, printed. Bank records from the account I hadn't opened, but that my attorney had accessed through proper legal channels. The forged documents, reviewed by a handwriting analyst Mitch knew through his practice. Her conclusion: the signatures had been produced by someone imitating a known exemplar, likely from a document the signer had access to. A document like a Christmas card, or a birthday check, or a sympathy card signed in my handwriting that Iris would have kept. Certified copies of everything went into a safe deposit box at a branch across town, under an account in my brother's name. My brother Pete knew what was happening. He was the one other person I told. The original documents stayed locked in Mitch's office. Conrad had reached out once during those 2 weeks. A casual text on my regular phone. Hey Roy, just thinking about our conversation from the summer about the refi. Rates have moved a little. Might be worth revisiting before the end of the year. Let me know if you want to grab lunch. I waited a day. Then I wrote back. That might make sense. Let's talk at Thanksgiving. His response came in under 4 minutes. Sounds great. Looking forward to it. I put the phone down. Thanksgiving mornings then and Conrad arrived at 11. She'd made the cranberry sauce as promised. Conrad brought a bottle of wine I'd never heard of and shook my hand at the door. Good grip, good eye contact. He was good at all of it. They moved around my kitchen like they'd already been practicing for when it would be theirs. I watched all of it and I said nothing. Dinner was quiet. Good food. The kind of meal that would have been completely ordinary if I hadn't known what I knew. Iris talked about her job. Conrad talked about a client he'd helped set up a trust. I nodded at the right moments. I refilled his wine glass. I passed the rolls. After dinner, Conrad helped me clear the plates, and then, leaning against the kitchen counter the way he always did when he was building up to something, he brought it up. Roy, I know this isn't the time, but I've actually put together some preliminary numbers on the refinancing. Nothing formal. Just wanted to get your reaction. He pulled a folder from the bag he'd brought in with the wine. I looked at the folder. I looked at him. And I reached into my pocket and set the prepaid phone on the kitchen table between us. Conrad's eyes went to it immediately, then up to me, then toward the doorway where Iris was still in the dining room. The room didn't go loud, it just went still. Iris came to the kitchen door. She saw the phone, she saw my face. And something behind her expression shifted. Not to shame exactly, to recognition. Like she'd been waiting for this moment the same way I had, just expecting it to look different. What is that? She asked. You left it in the freezer, I said. I set the second document, the timeline, in her handwriting, on the table next to the phone. She didn't deny it. She didn't perform surprise. She just looked at the table for a long moment, and then she looked at Conrad. And Conrad said the thing that told me everything about who he actually was. He said, Iris, we should probably call someone. Not I'm sorry, not I can explain. We should call someone. She looked at him like he was a stranger. Which, I think in that moment he was. I said, there's already someone here. And right on cue, Mitch Garland stepped in from the front hallway. He'd parked down the block. He had his briefcase. He had his calm. Conrad Platt, Mitch said. I'm Roy Callahan's attorney. I'd like to discuss as a notarized document bearing Mr. Callahan's forged signature, an unauthorized financial account opened in his name, and your prior complaint history in Lancaster County. We can do that now, or I can have the district attorney's office reach out Monday morning. That's your choice to make. Conrad's posture changed, not all at once. Incrementally, like pressure leaving a tire. He left without the wine. Iris stayed. She sat at my kitchen table, Carol's kitchen table, and didn't speak for a long time. When she finally did, she didn't make excuses. She just said, Dad, I'm sorry. I didn't say it was all right. Because it wasn't. I said, I know you're in there somewhere, Iris. I raised you. I know what you're capable of. But I need you to hear me right now because I'm only going to say this once. What was in that freezer stops today. Every document, every account, every step on that timeline, it stops today, and what happens next depends entirely on you. She nodded, once, small. Conrad Platt surrendered his financial planning license in Pennsylvania 4 months later as part of a civil settlement. The forged documents were turned over to the Dauphin County DA's office. Whether charges followed, I'll leave between him and whatever decisions he made. Some things aren't mine to finish. Iris and I are not what we were. I don't know if we ever will be. But she calls on Sundays. We talk. I don't pretend it's easy, neither does she. The chest freezer went out to the curb on a Monday morning. By Tuesday it was gone. Somebody always picks those things up. I don't know what they do with them. Maybe they just wanted the metal. Maybe they fix them up. Maybe they find something inside them too. I've been thinking lately about what we store in the things we don't want to look at too closely. The freezer, the attic, the filing cabinet with the folders you haven't opened since your wife was alive. The loyalty you extend to someone because you raised them and you love them, and you assume, because you have to assume, that love is a two-way structure. Sometimes it isn't. Here's what I want you to take from this. If you are over 50, if you've lost a spouse, if someone in your life, even someone you love, has started handling financial conversations that you've been too tired or too sad to track, please listen to me. You are allowed to ask questions. You are allowed to slow down. You are allowed to say, show me the paperwork, show me the account, let me sit with this before I sign anything. You are not paranoid. You are not being difficult. You are being awake. If you suspect someone has filed a power of attorney in your name without your valid consent, you can contact the Dauphin County Recorder, or whatever recorder serves your county, and request a search of documents filed in your name. It costs almost nothing. You can freeze your credit through Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion for free. You can pull your home title from your county recorder's office for under $20. You can call your state's attorney general's office and ask about elder financial abuse resources. These tools exist. Nobody tells you about them while you're grieving, and that is exactly when you need them. And if you have an adult child you love and trust and would do anything for, and something in your gut has been whispering to you for months, not shouting, just whispering, please listen to it. Not with suspicion, just with your eyes open. Because the person who loves you and the person who is planning to take from you can look identical from across a kitchen table. I know. I sat across from both of them for 4 years and I thought they were the same person. Before I go, I want to hear from you. Comment 1 if you think I handled this the right way. Comment 2 if you think Iris deserved a chance to come forward on her own. Comment 3 if you've ever had a moment where something small, a sound, a piece of paper, a gap in a story, made you look at someone you love differently. And underneath your number, tell me where you're watching from. Your city, your state, your country. What time is it there right now? I read every single one of these. One last thing. If this story sat with you, if it reached something you've been carrying, hit the like button before you go. It takes 1 second and it tells the platform to put this in front of someone who needs it tonight. Maybe someone who's about to sign something they haven't read. Maybe someone who's been pushing a feeling down for months because it's easier than what it means. Subscribe and turn on the bell because every week I tell stories like this. Real human stories about trust, about loss, and about the things that fall out when something finally breaks open. Disclaimer. This is a fictional story built from documented patterns of elder financial fraud and forged estate documents reported across Pennsylvania and the broader United States. Every name, location, and detail is my own creation. Nothing in this story should be taken as legal advice. If anything here matched your real life too closely, please contact a licensed elder law attorney, your county district attorney's office, or the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. You are not alone. And remember, sometimes the truth doesn't announce itself. Sometimes it just slides out quietly onto a cold concrete floor and waits for you to pick it up. Stay alert, stay kind. I'll see you in the next one.